to ask you a question. Right, I say about. It'll probably take 10 minutes to get to. But I am intending at some point in the next 12 or 13 minutes to ask you a question which I want you to call me up. I want you to remind me, tell me off, tick me off if you find me sort of reaching for a similar question too often. So part of what I want to ask you today is framed by a suspicion that I think I spend too much time on Twitter, and I think sometimes it gives me a slightly skewed idea of what other people are thinking. So what you might loosely describe as anti-mask sentiment. How widespread is it? But I don't want to turn it into a thing where I often come on the radio and say to you, is Twitter unrepresentative of broader truths, or does it have a disproportionate representation of people that I find a bit crackers? Do you see what I mean? So just be aware. Just keep an eye on me, is what I'm saying. I think that's generally a permanent request that I'd like to have in play on the programme. But it's helpful to give you specifics occasionally. And the specifics of this one, don't let me every day do a topic that is basically, is Twitter an unrepresentative reflection of reality? Because I'm fascinated by the psychology of being more threatened by a face mask than a virus. I'm genuinely fascinated by it. As you know, I mean, I wouldn't do this for a living if I wasn't intrigued and constantly entranced by mindsets and opinions and positions that I find absolutely impenetrable. Of course, there are the obvious ones, and then there are the ugly ones, the ones that I believe in my heart that you can save people from damaging prejudices. You can help people see the light, because I've been helped myself in some areas. So you can usually get at least the beginnings of a handle on a position that you find really, really odd. And even if it's an uncharitable analysis, even if you end up saying, well, they believe that because they're very sad, or they're very angry, or they got dropped on their head as a child, or whatever it may be, you can at least begin to get a handle on it. But almost as soon as this government announced that masks will once again be mandatory in some settings and not mandatory in others, which will be an element of the conversation to which we turn this morning at some point, almost as soon as the government had announced that there would be a return to mandated or mandatory masks on public transport and in some other settings as well, the pushback began. And you see, I think, why I am partly including in the question. It's only very much a subsidiary part of our inquiries this morning, whether or not there is a danger of seeing some quite strange attention-seeking characters on Twitter, some of them, with profiles, some of them the names that are known, albeit not often for their, shall we say, acumen or insight. They're often known for other things, and they've managed to jump onto this particular hobby horse, and a lot of people apparently follow them as well. So I don't know. So that's a tiny little side order of a question. Is it fair to say, because over 90% on my tube train this morning were wearing masks. I mentioned that on social media, and a lot of people responded with less felicitous experiences. Quite a few people on the train from Bolton to Manchester this morning, who while also following my social media ponderings, because that was reported to me as a particularly egregious offender. There was a profound shortage of masks on the train that makes its way across that part of the northwest, the Bolton to Manchester. I don't know what other trains would be on that line, but that a lot of people came straight back at me and said, "Not on my train, mate. I'm on the train from Bolton to Manchester, and there are not. There's barely a mask in sight." Oddly, in London, if you care about such things, the District line, in my experience, seems to have a much higher mask rate than the Piccadilly line. They're the two lines I use the most. I don't know why that would be. District line is a little bit more sort of... Actually, I've got no idea why that would be. The Piccadilly line, I see fewer masks than I do on the District line. And as of today, I'm also getting messages from people saying things like, a couple of people got on my carriage without a mask, but so many people are now wearing a mask, much more than last week, albeit that the new rules don't kick in until tomorrow. Lots of people wearing a mask, and that kind of acts as a behavioural catalyst to other people. So that's the third category, isn't it? The no mask, not the anti-mask, the forgot the mask type of category, into which I think almost all of us must have fallen at some time. And not even forgot the mask, but just sort of psychologically psychologically don't wear the mask. And that's why psychology is really important to these kind of policy proposals. They have to work out what people are going to do, what they will put up with, what they won't put up with, and where the sort of utilitarian benefit lies, where the general benefit lies. And so those are your 3/4 categories. Always doing your best to do the right thing. Always refusing ever to wear one because, I don't know, Uncle Keith's Facebook page, or kind of just a little bit lax. And that's not helped, I don't think, by the messaging that's come from the very top for the last few weeks, do you? Or the last few months? The front bench in the House of Commons. You couldn't tell from one day to the next whether they'd be wearing masks or not. Rees-Mogg, I don't think, ever wears a mask. Johnson famously seems to sort of lose it whenever there are cameras around, and then reportedly puts it back on again when the cameras aren't there. What's that about? Who's that supposed to help? What message does that send out to people? And then, similarly, the notion that you can know that you should be wearing it, but forget. I told you the maddest thing from the last few days for me is few weeks. I told you already, I went to see the magnificent Jonathan Pye live at the theatre. And as with most of my visits to the theatre in the last few months, the mask take-up rate was low, surprisingly low, but everyone was laughing at the jokes about people who don't wear masks. That was a really surreal moment that I think sums up perfectly what I'm describing to you about the kind of the psychology of the situation. So the theatre is full of people who think, and I think I'm probably guilty of this, although I was wearing my mask that night, the theatre was full of people who thought that they were the good guys, and they were laughing quite... I don't want to say condescendingly, but there was probably an element of intelligence attached to some of the gags that Jonathan Pye was doing. And we were laughing at people who don't wear masks in a theatre where most of us were not wearing masks. And I don't get that at all. I don't think that's a phone-in. Is it? I mean, we spend an increasing amount of time these days, and I have to tell you, I'm loving it, trying to work out where other positions come from, or where ideas that strike some of us as a bit crackers might come from. That, I suspect, you would need to be a psychology student to get your head around that. Laughing at people who don't wear masks while not actually wearing a mask, but still somehow psychologically seeing yourself as one of the people allowed to laugh at the people who aren't wearing masks. Are you still with me at the back? Good. Then I'll begin. So at 11 after 10, I'm fascinated by that. We may get onto that a little bit later. But I'm going to frame it like this. The psychology that sees people feel more threatened by being told to wear a mask than they are by the virus that's killed about 150,000 people in this country alone. I'm fascinated by that. If I'm describing you, then you probably already feel unfairly treated by that description. But that's not my problem. That's your problem. It's just true. It's killed 150,000 people, and yet you're more threatened by an order to wear a mask than you are by the threat posed by the virus. And of course, the maddest element about this, again, unless I'm missing something huge, in which case 0345 6060973, is that they often have quite odd views about the vaccines as well. And that doesn't make sense, because if you really, really, really don't want to get vaccinated, and let's pretend for the moment that you've got a sound scientific reason for that position, rather than just a subscription to your Uncle Keith's Facebook page. If you really, really, really don't want to get vaccinated, then the mask should be welded to your face. Oh, masks don't work. Right. Well, yeah, okay, that would be the position, wouldn't it? Then what's the worst that can happen is the thing we reach for subsequently at this point. What is the worst that can happen? If we sit down 5 years from now and the science has judged that actually, in retro, it's done the opposite. The science has become bigger and bigger and bigger in support of the efficacy of wearing face masks. But let's pretend it didn't. Let's pretend that 5 years from now it was conclusively proved that wearing a face mask made no difference whatsoever to the transmission of coronavirus. And I don't know what I would be supposed to be feeling. Would I be sitting there going, oh my God, I wasted all those train journeys wearing a mask when I didn't need to? I can't quite imagine any circumstances in which I would feel cheated or betrayed or robbed. Oh my God, I sat in Phantom of the Opera with a mask on and my glasses kept steaming up. I could have seen Phantom of the Opera through slightly less steamy lenses. If only I'd known back then that I didn't have to wear a face. Do you see what I mean? So these are the baffling elements to me The notion that you're more threatened by a mask than you are by a virus. The idea that even if it turned out they weren't helpful, you haven't lost much or sacrificed much or given up much. It's just so whiny. I'm sorry. It's just so whiny. It's like a kindergarten full of recalcitrant toddlers who don't want to eat their broccoli or something. I don't get it. Hopefully by 11 o'clock today, I will get it. 03456060973. And then finally, and somewhat unsurprisingly, and quite possibly foolishly, I do wonder whether they've got it right this time. They've moved further and faster, I think, than they have at the point of any other escalation. Don't you? It's still early. It might well turn out in a couple of weeks, when the dust settles, that Omicron is not as big a worry as it might be. The message coming from some medics in South Africa and it's early doors, and it is not yet, of course, definitive, because you need a couple more weeks to assess and collate the data. But although transmissibility may be higher, the symptoms are not. So there's every prospect that long before Christmas they'll have ramped down the alarm levels. But better safe than sorry was something that we wanted them to do for all of last year and most of this year, and they didn't. I'm going to cautiously suggest to you, and I am more than ready to take my medicine should I need to, that this response is the best so far to a, quote, new threat. Whether you're going back to the old new threat, or the new threat, or the new threat, which they nearly called it, but then realised that pronouncing that Greek letter new, or ni, some Monty Python reference there for older listeners, would be unhelpful. So therefore it is Omicron. And if you need a good joke today, probably the best joke I've seen with regard to all of this is not how I wanted to learn the Greek alphabet, lads. This is not how I wanted to learn the Greek alphabet. Special prize to anyone who knows what comes after Omicron? P. 10:15 is the time. The number you need is 03456060973. The questions are myriad. It's one of those mornings where the producer is looking at me with a very frustrated face because I've asked about 16 different questions, none of which have emerged as the front runner. So let's do it backwards. Let's start with, they've got it about right this time, haven't they? I think. 03456060973. God, that feels uncomfortable. That feels unfamiliar. Saying that, cautious support for the government's current policies, with the obvious caveats. But the other bit, the bit I love, whether you're doing this first-hand or second-hand, explain to me the logic of being more threatened by a face mask than by a virus that's killed 150,000 people. If I can get to the bottom of that, then we won't have wasted our morning. To mask or not to mask. And with that side order, actually, I forgot, didn't I? We're talking about people who feel more threatened by masks than they do by a virus that's killed 150,000 people in this country alone. But wondering at the same time, if you don't mind, whether or not social media sometimes leaves us believing there are way more of those people than there really are. Do you see what I mean? I don't know how you measure that. Let's start with Laura, who's in Stoke Newington. Laura, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello.
Good morning. I've got the answer for you about why people feel.
Well, don't be too good, because I was hoping to string this out until at least 11 o'clock.
Sorry?
I'm hoping to string this out until at least 11 o'clock. So don't go definitive at 20 past 10. We'll leave some room for embellishment and improvement, Laura.
We'll do. No, I've got three really ridiculous friends. They refuse. I hate saying it, but they refuse to get vaccinated,
right,
and they refuse to wear masks. Now, their reasons are not that... I'll get straight to the point.
Yeah.
The government is saying you should wear masks. The government's saying you should get vaccinated.
Yeah.
And they do not want to be dictated to by the government. And they feel that if they listen to the government over the masks and the vaccinations, it could then lead to a dictatorship in all sorts of things, not just to do with COVID.
I mean... But they know that laws existed long before the virus.
Yeah.
And they have to obey those laws or they get punished.
I know. It doesn't make any sense at all, really. I mean, they're the Auntie Dorises.
Yeah, no, not Auntie Doris. Auntie Doris, Neil's just pointed out that Auntie Doris has actually become a victim of cancel culture. She's been replaced with Uncle Keith now because a lovely lady called Doris rang in and she was very cross with me. So I had to...
I'm sorry to the Doris who rang in.
Exactly.
But yeah, they post all these stupid things all over their Facebook, and I want to say things, but because they're friends, I don't want to start arguments.
No.
I get so annoyed with them.
Well, it's one or the other as well. I mean, obviously, you should be doing both. But the idea that if you're going to avoid the vaccine, then you should be the people that are really, really going in hard on the masks.
I know, but they just can't. They just feel that, no, I'm not to be told what to do.
And that is it.
If I start listening to the government over this and they're dictating to me, they'll start dictating to everyone about other things.
Okay, let's imagine for a moment. Let's explore the possibility that they're right and we're wrong. So we are. What are we doing? We are blindly marching towards a totalitarian regime with our eyes closed, without noticing that that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And they're using public health measures and pretending that they're not good for us in order to soften us up for orders that would be more obviously bad for us.
Yeah, I know.
Is it?
I
don't know.
I get so confused. Right. One of them, I have to add,
yes.
He's actually a medical man, not in ordinary medicine. It's on the complementary medicine side. And he actually saved my life 12 years ago when I was extremely ill. And my NHS local hospital couldn't find what was wrong with me. And what it boiled down to in the end was allergies, and they didn't check for allergies. Yeah. Now, he saved my life, and I went to him for everything after that. But now I will not have anything to do with him. I will never go to him again.
Well, I'll take that.
Not only is he not wearing a mask and won't get vaccinated, he's still working and giving God knows what to anyone.
Doing consultations with people all the time.
Yeah, he lives in Cheshire, and he comes all the way down to London for all the protests about anti-vaccines and anti-masks.
And it is okay. Well, so that's answer number one. Thank you, Laura. Answer number one is that it's the beginning of a dictatorship, and I can snigger at that, but I wonder whether every dictatorship in history started off with people sniggering. So maybe there are people listening to this now going, "Yep, you sheeple, you just don't realise it yet." But then if you were going to launch... Oh, Laura, very briefly, were they cross about the unlawful proroguing of Parliament?
I'm not sure. I've not seen anything about that on their
Because if you were worried about a dictatorship, you'd think that a government misleading a monarch and then unlawfully proroguing the democratically elected Parliament would be a slightly bigger alarm bell than a face mask mandate. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. 03456060973. So how could you prove that it was true? Not to be too mischievous or frivolous. I mean, at what point would they be able to turn around and say, we told you so? It would have to be when you were somehow compelled to follow orders that were obviously dangerous, like you were being ordered to jump off a cliff or you were being ordered to eat sand or something like that. The failure for me comes logically when the rule would change from the thing that they're pretending is good for you but isn't really, they're just trying to make you all obedient, into the thing that they really secretly want you to be ordered to do. What would that be? I do not know. Damian's in Wolverhampton. Damian, what's going on?
Hi, James. So I'm a doctor of psychology, and I want to talk to you about this idea of the difference between why people are so terrified of a virus as mask. And I think
I'm going to use the word threatened rather than terrified, just for my own preferences, if that's all right. Because I think terrified, everyone objects to being told that they're terrified sometimes, even if they are. So why would someone feel more threatened by a mandate? I think that's what we take from Laura's call. It's not the mask itself that they're threatened by. It's the legislation, the mandatory nature of the mask, than they are by a virus that's killed 150,000 people.
Exactly, yeah. So this idea, essentially, of liberty, of civil liberty. So there's a classic psychological theory called social identity theory that essentially states that we are more scared of an out-group, no matter what that out-group is, any out-group, than we are an in-group. So your idea about when you went into the theatre and everyone was laughing at the out-group, essentially, that was what was going on.
Even though we were in it. Technically, we were in the out-group while we were laughing as members of the in-group.
Yeah, but you can't consider yourself to be part of an out-group because that causes massive cognitive dissonance and just sheer discomfort for the person.
Okay.
So you can't perceive yourself as part of an out-group, even though you may well be part of that out-group. So the people who were, say, behind on a vaccine or they forgot their mask, they're like, but I'm not that person, I'm not that person, I can't be that person. And that's the basis of a lot of basic social psychological theories.
So there's a sense of belonging as well from the other side of the fence, is it?
Exactly, yeah. So I was listening last night to one of the other DJs, no names mentioned.
No.
There seemed to be almost a rhetoric coming through that we're arguing against the government. Anything the government say must be wrong. And I liked the fact that you said this morning just that it seems strange. I mean, I'm in your boat. I'm very much against a lot of the things this government do. However, I seem to be with them on this. Like, yeah, we've been tentative, but we're still putting forward.
Well, touch wood. We might have changed our minds by the end of the hour. And I speak. I mean,
let's be honest. We know Boris.
To make it self-referential, very briefly, I speak as a journalist who has got members of the government, or at least one member of the government, publicly calling for me to be sacked. So I don't think anyone could describe me as a soft touch or somebody that's in the pocket of the current Conservative cabinet. So it is the idea that everything the government does is designed to damage the population. Is that part of it, or am I oversimplifying?
Yeah, no. Essentially, yeah. So people are considering this government as an outgroup and putting them against us as the people, as the in-group. Because, I mean, we have got a Tory government that unfortunately are completely disconnected from the public. But
a lot of the anti-mask sentiment seems to be right-wing, though.
Yeah, but it's extreme right-wing, which is very different from the... so if you look at the people who are...
Traditional conservatism.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not the Rees-Moggs of the world, it's the other former...
Okay, final question, and you may not be able to answer this one. The proroguing of Parliament question. Why, if you are genuinely worried about a government riding roughshod over your liberties, how could you give a free pass to the proroguing of Parliament but get your knickers in a right old twist over a face mask mandate?
So, again, it's a difficult question to answer. So my view is it's the difference between how proximal that phenomena is compared to...
Did you just say proximal?
Yeah.
Instead of saying near?
But no, that is very proximal to...
But does proximal not just mean near?
No.
Does it not?
Well, I suppose not in that context, no. Okay, so yeah.
That's why you got the PhD, because you say proximal instead of near. So you mean, proximal near in a broader sense, as in nothing. I'm not going to be affected by the proroguing of Parliament.
Exactly.
But I'm not going to they'll have to take my face mask off me. They'll never make me wear a mask, damn them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and it's that difference between sort of, but the proroguing of Parliament doesn't affect me realistically. However, I bloody well not wearing this mask.
I thought. Thank you, Dr. Damian, Doctor of Psychology, providing some thoughtful insights, some helpful insights, but not quite connecting those final dots. It's not a criticism. I only drew the dots 5 minutes ago. The final dots being, if you are genuinely, because I do worry this government is quite oppressive in nature. I think ignoring independent inquiries into things like bullying, in the case of the Home Secretary, I think that I do worry. I can laugh about it because it's me, but I do worry about having senior politicians calling for journalists to be silenced in public. I mean, these are genuine steps towards totalitarianism. The proroguing of our Parliament. These are huge issues that you could make a case. Be quite a dry case, I think. That's probably where proximal comes into it. It doesn't feel immediate, but there is lots of evidence that this government is assaulting some of our ancient traditions and liberties. But a face mask mandate just doesn't touch the sides of those suspicions. For me, why does it for all the people for whom it does? I mean, I listened, Kirstine and Brian up next. I just want to pick up a text, if I may. Hi, James, you are missing the point. That's always a good start. A large percentage of the population are not stupid enough to buy into the farcical idea that a piece of cloth will capture and contain a microscopic virus. If these masks genuinely did capture and contain viruses, then there would be a global policy on them. Effective ones would be sent out to every home, and there would be biohazard waste bins on every street corner for their disposal. So, benefit of the doubt time. So all right, they're deliberately telling us to wear masks while knowing that we don't need to. And then you get on to the why of it. If you're going to take these sort of crackpot theories seriously, then you get, why are they doing that? And the only answer we've got at the moment is because they're softening us up for much bigger assaults upon our liberties. To which my first question would be, like what? What should I be looking out for, lads? What should I be on my guard about? So today, face masks. Tomorrow, what? We all have to wear stiletto heels to the supermarket? I mean, what are they going to be taking away from me next? Because when they lied to the Queen and prorogued Parliament, I got quite unnerved by that. When they started sacking or allowing independent advisors to resign after their reports had been completely ignored by the Prime Minister, I got quite unnerved by that. I'm a bit cosy as a British person in the thought that our checks and balances are big enough to guard against those kind of excesses. But I got quite unnerved by the unlawful proroguing of Parliament, by the resignation of an independent advisor on standards, I got very unnerved by the Barnard Castle debacle. I thought, crikey, if they're lying about that so brazenly, what else are they going to lie about? So there's lots of examples from this government that I could point to and say, these might prove to be alarm bells a little bit further down the line. And then, as you could probably tell, I'd be able to explain to you in some depth with reference to precedents and history and past examples why those three things were potentially significant moments in our democratic decline, if that's what we turn out to be in. Those three things there, the Barnard Castle lies, the resignation of the independent advisor on standards because the Prime Minister elected to completely ignore his report into the Home Secretary's proven bullying, and finally the misleading of the monarch in pursuit of an unlawful proroguing of Parliament. And then, of course, the attacks on judges. All of these things are historically sound examples of baby steps towards oppression. How does a mask mandate fit into that? Just tell me, seriously, whoever sent this text. Because that's your theory, whether you realise it or not, is that they're lying about the effectiveness of masks, or they're wrong, or they're misleading us about the effectiveness of masks in order to, because it's about what's going to happen next. So I've got two questions. Number one, what's going to happen next? 03456060973. And number two, well, you know what number two is. Those three examples I've just given you, how can they be less worrying than a mask mandate? I'm genuinely fascinated to know how people process that question, which is, of course, a variation on the bigger question. How can you be more threatened by a mask mandate than you are by a virus? 10:37 is the time. Kirstine is Blaby in Leicestershire. Kirstine, what would you like to say?
Hi, I'm part of my district council, and what I'd like to say is I'm relieved that mask wearing is coming back in because,
yes, of course.
Because at our council meetings, the last three full council meetings we've had, two of them we've had people with COVID, yet only a few of the councillors wear masks. And I've asked, it's obvious I wear a mask, and I would appreciate it if others wore masks, but nothing's changed.
Well, and again, if they don't have to, then they don't have to. That is it. And I think you're probably a bit more grown up than I am, but I've certainly been in situations where I should have worn a mask, but I didn't because nobody else was. And that's why I'm glad the rules are coming back, because I think they create a sort of an appetite among the public. So what do you think motivates the people who are more threatened, even in your council meeting, more threatened by a mask mandate than by an actual virus?
I think they feel removed from it. Maybe it won't touch them now they've been had the vaccine, that they're immune. Although after two meetings, different meetings when people have had COVID, that they could have caught off and that were in a room with them for several hours without good enough ventilation,
yes,
you would think they would change that opinion and rethink. So I'm glad it's becoming mandatory. I'm glad they'll have to do it.
Have they gone far enough? If you were in charge, would you have gone even further? Because I think this is the furthest, fastest, quick response to a new threat that we've seen since, March of 2020.
Well, maybe they realise they shouldn't have changed the rules about mask wearing anyway. And I admit at times I've not worn a mask because you give up.
Yes, of course you
give
do.
up if a lot of people are not wearing them. Why are you doing it? You're doing it for other people. Maybe you get some protection yourself, who knows? But, when you kind of slowly give up. So I'm glad they've changed the rules. Maybe they've seen that was a wrong decision.
That's an interesting point. They just saw it as an opportunity. They would have quite liked to have done this sooner, but that would have looked like another U-turn. But as the first sign of trouble, we'll bring them all straight back in again because we probably shouldn't have taken them away in the first place. We should have carried on being like the countries that have kept the mask mandates in place. Or kept the mask requirements in place. Well, no, not to you, Kirstine, but clearly to a lot of people, or at least to some people, there is a furious resistance to the idea of a mask. People genuinely think that it is an assault upon their citizenship. Natasha Devon's tweeted me to say people accuse you of. Let me get this right. You get accused of being unpatriotic and anti-British if you're in favour of a mask mandate. Not in Blaby District Council, I'm sure, but that those feelings are out there somewhere. I do not begin to understand where they come from.
People don't trust the government. People don't trust them
I don't
anymore.
trust the government, flipping heck. But I don't think that they'd make up stories about face masks.
Well, I think it's maybe the last straw. You know,
Maybe.
when you feel like things are under threat and things are changing, there's no consistent leadership.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like, you know, it's more a symbol of how they're feeling. And it's,
Maybe.
you know, transparent.
Except generally, from what I can tell, these are people who lean to the right. There's a weird intersection of racism and anti-mask or anti-vaccine rhetoric. That's clear to see. There was a fascinating bit of research, again, on Twitter yesterday that I tweeted, and that crossover. Well, it's clear to see, and that's of course. Then the accusation of being unpatriotic comes into it. It's just insane. But it's out there, and quite a few of you, thankfully, are suggesting that, you're right, it is out there, but it's nowhere near as prominent or as prolific as it appears to be when you're looking at it through the lens of attention-seeking crybabies on social media. Kirstine, thank you. Brian's in Loch Lomond. Brian, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, Brian.
We're definitely in the midst of another pandemic at the moment, running concurrently with the COVID, and it's the pandemic of conspiracy theory.
Is it, though? Is it that widespread?
Absolutely.
Oh.
It's only going to get worse, mate. I mean, I think the problem was we're taking our lead from across the pond.
Yes.
If you look at what's been happening over there the past sort of 4 or 5 years, you had a government who were actively encouraging people like Alex Jones.
Well, the mask there became a symbol of Donald Trump's uselessness, didn't it? It was, and it's, of course, now haunting Joe Biden because getting people to get vaccinated and wear masks has become so politicised, much more so in America than here, I would argue.
Yeah, but they operate under the basis of freedom, don't they? But the freedom is spelled D-U-M-B at the end, unfortunately, for a lot of them. A lot of them just...
So how does it manifest itself in your life? How do you come across this?
Well, I've been assaulted in my taxi.
Assaulted?
I get punched in the face off a drunken off-duty female paramedic one night shortly after the first lockdown restrictions were slowly eased, and that was because I'd asked her several times to put on a face covering in the taxi, and it was a face covering I had to provide her because of one with her. So it got to the point I was like, I snapped, to be honest, and I pulled the car in and I tried to get a picture of her on my phone.
Right, and then she swung at you.
Went for me, yeah. Because
And what was she saying, Brian? What was she saying? What was her rationale? Because there are people in the health service who are not, they're generally not, and this is absolutely no offence to paramedics listening, but you don't meet many consultants, actual medical consultants treating patients. You certainly don't meet many people working in ICU who hold these views, but the lower down the chain of command you go, you can come across them. So what was she screaming at you while you asked her to wear a mask? What was her theory?
No, I mean, I gave her the mask and I asked her on 3 separate occasions to put it over her face because she was singing, she kept pulling the mask down, she had a drink. She was in with her mum. Her mum was also...
But was it because she was leathered, or was it because she was a conspiracy theorist, is what I'm asking you?
I think it was a bit of both, to be honest.
All right. Well, I'm looking more for... I mean, you can't get sense out of a drunk person at the best of times, so probably not the best case study for my quest this morning to join these dots together. I'm sticking with that one. I love it when things pop up in the course of the programme. Brian, thank you, mate. Take care. Drive carefully. That if you're genuinely worried, and I think this is part of it, about an assault upon your liberties, then just talk me through why you were cool with those 3 examples I gave you. The Barnard Castle weaponisation of barefaced lies by the most senior members of government. I mean, literally lying to you in the most egregious way, the most obvious and blatant of ways. Number 2, the independent advisor on standards concluding that the Home Secretary is a bully. In previous regimes, under pretty much any previous Prime Minister, that would be here's the door, go through it territory. Almost certainly. This Prime Minister, don't worry, crack on, everyone as you were. The independent advisor's going to resign. Incredible. And then, for me, the mother of all examples or alarm bells, they prorogued Parliament after misleading the Queen. They sent Jacob Rees-Mogg to mislead the Queen at Balmoral, and then they unlawfully prorogued Parliament. It doesn't matter, though. It doesn't matter. So how can... a face mask be more of a threat to your liberty than a government that lies to you, unlawfully prorogues Parliament, and what was the other one, Keith? The unlawful prorogue of Parliament, the Barnard Castle debacle, and the other one, the other one. How can you be more worried about a face mask than you are about those three things? The resignation of the independent advisor on standards. I'd love you to have a crack at explaining that, but I think we both know that you can't. Then who is the enemy then? Because I'll tell you now, and I'll tell you for nothing, this is not a government that is fond of coronavirus restrictions. And you have senior members of the cabinet still refusing to wear masks, even when everybody else on the front bench is. Jacob Rees-Mogg sticks out like a sore thumb on that one, but Boris Johnson visits hospitals and gets photographed not wearing a mask. These are not politicians that are desperate to bring in these restrictions. I would argue that they are the opposite, in fact. So, again, if you are subscribing to this, that it's an assault upon our liberties school of thought, who's the enemy? Because it isn't the people in charge. They've gone nowhere near as far as they could have done. Certainly nowhere near as far as they would have done if they were really embarked upon a secret plan to steal all your liberties. Just the more you talk about it, the less sense it makes. 10:50 is the time. Alfie is in Bow. Alfie, what would you like to say?
Hiya. I'd just like to try my best to answer the question why people would be less scared of COVID.
Threatened, not
less threatened by COVID. Like, for instance, myself, I had COVID last year.
Yeah, same.
Amongst all the, I was at the highest level of precautions. I was staying at home, off work, mask, everything. I still managed, to catch COVID anyway. And for myself, it was, like a cold for a couple of days. And I know I don't, I can see that for unhealthier people or for older population, it has been devastating.
It's long COVID affects perfectly healthy people, and it has, of course, killed people who are young and who are healthy. So, I understand
that, but I can only go off my own experience. And
that's very honest of you, because I find it really easy to go off other people's.
For instance, me and my brother had COVID, and
this is a sort of character difference between you and me, then.
I don't know, but it just put it this way: with the question to the mask versus the threat to COVID, for some people, not all. I'm not on either side. I'm not on anti-vax. I'm not on locking myself in my house. But in terms of the mask, like you've mentioned yourself, when you see world leaders put on their masks for the photo shoots, and then as soon as it's done, whip them off, shake hands and hug. If someone like Boris Johnson isn't afraid,
they take them off for the photo shoots.
No, sorry, they take them off as soon as the photos are done. There's plenty of videos online of
but you're watching them back. You're watching them the wrong way round. They take the masks off for the photo shoots because they don't want to be photographed wearing the masks. And then when they're going about the business and they're not on official duties, they put the masks on. But let's pretend you're right. Let's pretend you're right. No, let's pretend you're right. And let me get this out. So why are they doing this dodgy thing? Do you think? Why are they pretending that masks work when secretly they don't believe that they do?
It might. Not everyone believes, James, that it is a massive conspiracy. Like myself,
no, I know. It's a simple question. Why do you think Joe Biden or whoever else you want to mention is only pretending to believe that masks are effective?
I believe it's just part of the show to prove that it is still really bad. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that it's not still. We are in a pandemic.
Right.
But I believe some of the efforts that are made can be a bit more theatrical to show, hey, look, we
that's
still
fascinating.
do care.
Why are they doing that, do you think?
To provoke, I guarantee if you turned off every aspect of the media tomorrow, or even as this, as the pandemic started, it would probably be less feared than it is now because people aren't seeing people dead in the street.
So the question remains, though, Alfie.
Every day.
The question is, why are they pretending it's worse than it really is, in your view? Because I don't think they are. You think they are. I'd love to know why. Why are they pretending it's worse than it really is?
I'm not saying they're pretending that it's worse than it is. I'm saying they're treating the issue communally. So they need everyone to be on board with the vaccine and stuff. But they can't if they allow someone like myself to go about my business and say, I don't need it for myself.
Yeah.
I don't want to
wear the mask. But that's exactly what's been in place.
I'm a gardener. I stay on my own most of
But that's
the time,
literally been the rules for the last couple of months, is that you literally can do whatever you want and decide to do it yourself. So they've literally been doing the thing you just said that they can't do. In fact, they're still doing it today, Alfie. It's only tomorrow that these new rules kick in. So that's not the answer to the question, is it?
This is the thing. I'm not against wearing the mask, and I'm not myself a scientist, and I'm not 100% that they do or don't work. I'm just saying that at one point in time, I had COVID. I was fine.
No, I understood all of that, but the mask isn't really designed to help. So I'm going to ask you once more, and thank you for being so honest. The notion that they are exaggerating the threat or pretending that it's really worse than it is. I'd love to know why you think they're doing that.
Not that I'm sold either way. Like I'm saying, I am still in the middle.
And the difference between you hear on the radio essentially saying to me that you might be able to explain why people are more fearful of the mask mandate than they are of the virus, and the answer has to include that makes some sense. There's a logic to it, which means that the politicians you're talking about who are taking off their masks before or after the photo shoots, it's immaterial. They are pretending that things are worse than they really are. You must have a theory as to why that is.
If at this point, imagine this, if at this point it came to light that the vaccine wasn't as effective as it has been promoted to be, a person such as yourself would be very distraught, so they would have to continue. You know, if they've let 70% of the population
but everybody knows that the vaccine could be overtaken by a new variant. Everybody knows that the vaccine isn't 100% effective.
So what I'm trying to say is, if someone like me will not get vaccinated because I believe that
you said you weren't anti-vax at the beginning.
They can't. You
said you weren't anti-vax 10 minutes ago.
Just because, I've had vaccines in my life. I just don't want this one right now.
I think when you're on a phone in about coronavirus and you say you're not anti-vax, everyone presumes you're talking about the coronavirus vaccine, mate, don't you?
Okay, fair enough. But the difference between myself and you
I'm going to
is
ask you once more. Why are they pretending that it's worse than it is?
I'm trying to explain that. I'm trying to say that if someone like myself does not want the vaccine, they cannot allow 70% of a population to believe one thing and 30% to walk around and do what they want, because someone like yourself will be very angry at that fact.
That's what's happening.
Sorry?
That's what's happening. You're there literally telling me you haven't been vaccinated, and then in the next breath you're telling me that they can't allow that to happen because I'll get angry.
Yeah, I'm saying so. They have to continue the mask wearing. They have to continue. Now it's the care homes. My brother lost his job. Next, it's the NHS. Where do you think it? Where do you think it ends, or where would you like it to end?
No, you're describing things to me that I think prove that the threat is big, and I'm asking you why you think they would pretend the threat isn't as big as it is. What is to be gained, Alfie? Mate, we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to make it really crystal. No, hang on. I want to get this crystal clear. You believe that they are exaggerating the scale of the problem or the threat of the virus. I disagree with you on that, but if I didn't disagree with you, I would ask you still, why are they doing it, mate? Why are they misleading us on this one? You have to at least try to answer that question in a clear
I'll do my best.
Well, you've had nearly 10 minutes and I've only got 60 seconds left, so just give me the short version.
30 seconds.
Why are they misleading us, mate?
Because there are people that corona does affect in a very bad way, and there are people that it doesn't. But they need to treat the problem communally, because it's too much of a systematic problem to try and weed out who needs treatment and who doesn't.
That's not misleading. Everybody knows that's true. Everybody knows it affects some people worse than it affects others. So that's not an answer to the question, Alfie. It's not even the beginning of an answer. It's not even a bad answer. It's a non-answer. Why are they exaggerating? Unless you're literally saying, they're making the messaging that they make in order to keep as many people alive as possible, and that's what you disapprove of. Good luck with the gardening, mate. Jesus. 10:59 is the time, very nearly. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. So why? That's all you ever ask, especially if you're worried that a government doesn't have your best interests at heart. Why are they doing that? Why? Why did they lie about Barnard Castle? Why did they unlawfully prorogue Parliament? Why didn't Boris Johnson sack the Home Secretary after she was found to be a bully? These are big political moments, potentially, big political questions. Why would a government lie about a virus, especially this government, which is constantly doing laps of honour to celebrate the lifting of restrictions and adamant about not wanting to bring them back. I think, to be fair to Alfie, and this might sound a little bit condescending, it has something to do with not paying that much attention to the real story, not actually listening to what the politicians are actually saying, not watching. What do you think Boris Johnson's attitude to face masks is? He is in charge. He's been photographed in a hospital not wearing them. So the idea that he is trying to oppress the nation or mask the population is so obviously silly that the only answer I've got at the moment as to how you could end up believing that would have to be that you're just not paying attention. But then what are you paying attention to? You're paying attention to people who, well, really don't know what day it is, let alone virology. Talking to that last caller, Alfie and Beau, I wonder if we can have a crack at what the plan is then. So, you know, I've listed, I mean, there's another one from Phil in Gibraltar. They're talking about getting rid of the Human Rights Act, this government. I'll say that again. I presume, unless you're not a human, you should be concerned about an assault upon legislation designed to protect all humans. The Human Rights Act. You know, and if you want to get all bulldoggy about it, Churchill, huge fan of the Human Rights Act. Also, of course, coined the phrase United States of Europe, but that ship has sailed. So, the Human Rights Act. How do you feel about the assault upon the Human Rights Act? Absolutely fine with it, mate. Okay. And a mask mandate in crowded shops where a lot of old and potentially vulnerable people want to be able to continue visiting. You can do your bit to help them feel a little bit safer and to be a little bit... So I'm not wearing a mask, mate. No. So hang on. Human Rights Act? Yeah, down with that sort of thing. Mask mandates, that's an assault upon my rights and liberties. They're abolishing the human right, or they want to abolish the Human Rights Act. Rob even co-wrote a book about it. But that's the Human Rights Act, James. That's not the same as making me wear a face nappy. And just, so what's the plan? Maybe this is a way to uncork it a little bit better. What is the plan? What is it that I can't see? The plan. I look at this, more right-wing government than any that we've had in my lifetime. More so than Margaret Thatcher, in many, many ways. Populated by people who have a very fragile relationship with the truth. Whether it is the proroguing of Parliament, the misleading of the Queen, the lying about Barnard Castle, the green lighting for bullies in the highest jobs. Whatever it is, there's a lot of very worrying stuff going on. I've listed it all for you. Those are just facts. They're not even opinions. So all of that stuff happened. But this government is apparently embarked upon a secret plan to do what? And the mask mandates and the vaccines, these are all part of the secret plan that only the really clever people understand. Only people like Piers, Corbyn really know what's going on. What is the secret plan? 0345 60 60973. What is it that my lack of patriotism is preventing me from seeing with a remarkably right-wing government which is ideologically opposed to the sort of measures that might have seen us suffer many, many fewer deaths than we suffered. Desperate to save Christmas, desperate to have Freedom Day, desperate to claim that we're going to be the first out of the woods and we're going to be world-beating. So what is it that they're secretly committed to while publicly appearing to be incredibly reluctant introducers of restrictions? Or am I doing that thing again? And it is not complicated at all. And it is simply something that's quite easy to believe if you're not really paying attention. Or you're paying attention to profoundly misinformed, possibly occasionally well-meaning, but just not very bright people. And I hate to say that. It sounds awful. But you know that old George Carlin line. Think about how stupid the average person is. And then remember, half of the people are even stupider than that. So is it just that? I hope not. But in a way, it's almost reassuring. But you hear it, don't you? You say, what's the plan then? Why are they doing this thing? And it falls apart. What is the plan? What is the secret agenda that I am not enlightened enough or patriotic enough to perceive? And of course, you can tell me what you have picked up secondhand. 0345 6060973. You don't have to be a subscriber to the secret agenda. But if you end up on national radio and you can't tell me what the secret agenda is, but you're absolutely adamant that there's a secret agenda, I truly hope that you might start wondering whether you're trusting the wrong people on this stuff. What's the secret agenda? No idea. Is there a secret agenda? Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. You sheeple can't see it. What is it? They're going to take away our liberty. What liberties? Why? How? And why are they pretending then to be so reluctant in the introduction of these? What's the secret plan that I can't currently see? Maybe we'll hit 12 o'clock today and I'll be on board. I'll be like, yeah, wow, I can't believe it's taken me so long to see the light, lads. Down with masks and vaccines. Up with, I don't know, Uncle Keith's Facebook page. Christopher's in La Roche in the Alps. Christopher, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Yeah, I wanted to react to the text you were commenting on, and again, you've been talking about it now. There is no secret agenda concerning face masks. While I agree with you, there's a secret agenda with the march to autocracy all across Europe and through America, and they're really well networked.
Not even secret.
The face march is... well, okay, it's open. But the face march counters that, because the countries that are actually have kept restrictions that are doing really well with face masks and vaccines are the more socialist ones. It's all the autocratic countries, from Orban to all the Republican governors in American states, and Johnson, the right-wing governments, who have been fighting restrictions.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
I cannot see how the Marx mandate is part of the march towards autocracy. It's counter to what they want to do.
Well, that's because you're not sufficiently enlightened, perhaps. You haven't had the indoctrination ceremony yet.
Probably. I do have some pretty crazy friends here in France.
What would they say if you said to them, "What is the plan?"
Well, what everybody's telling you, I don't know what they think the plan is. These are people who kind of live on the margins anyway. I mean, they're great people.
Sure.
The music community. They're fun to be around. They're interesting.
A little bit countercultural. Is what I'm hearing.
A little bit countercultural. And this seems to be just an extension of that.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a reason beyond that.
No, well, I mean, we have to. Otherwise, we cannot be able to hang our hat anywhere. What is it? True. I mean, because what if they're right and we're wrong? What if there is actually a secret agenda to strip of all our liberties from us? And it's been undertaken by a government that's only pretending to not want to bring in restrictions and secretly can't wait to bring in more restrictions. Just can't quite explain to us why they keep lifting them too early.
We know about it. Like you said, we know about the sort of networking between all the autocratic right-wing Bannon-supported guys around the world. We know if this was part of it, but it's not, because it's all the people who are not involved in that, who are trying to do something.
Well, there we go. I mean, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep trying. 0345 60 60973 is the number that you need. And that is the question then that I'm going to stick with, in the hope. I mean, the phone lines are very busy, but if it turns out no one's really having a proper crack at answering this particular question, either from first hand or second hand, then we may move on. But I don't want to. I want to know what the plan is, and we'll also have a little chat about whether or not they have actually got it more or less right this time. Some people will think they haven't gone far enough. Some people will think they've gone too far. Politics is usually the art of the possible. Far be it from me to have any sympathy for the current regime, for reasons that I think it's fair to say I share with you fairly frequently. But even a stop clock is right twice a day, and I think they've moved fast, and they've moved first almost. They've certainly moved early on this for the first time since it started, and that reassures me. Although it's possible I'm craving reassurance a little bit too much, because, and another point, there's an article in the Mail today about something about the left love lockdowns. I think it's by by Nigel Lawson's son. I've never met anyone who loves lockdowns. No one loves lockdowns. Everybody hates lockdowns. Maybe there are some exceptions out there, like people who are a bit sort of hermetic in outlook on life, but nobody is like, yeah, we're having another lockdown. Nobody. Where does this division come from? Oh, they love lockdowns, that lot do. It's a bit like saying they love cod liver oil or something. They take cod liver oil because they think it keeps them they love cod liver oil. Even as they wince and endure the privations, they're loving it. They're loving lockdown. They don't love lockdown. Nobody loves lockdown. The best way to avoid a lockdown is to do all the other bits that you can do before you have to have a lockdown. So why are all the people who accuse others of loving lockdown so opposed to all the bits you can do to avoid lockdown? I can't believe we're still here after 18 months. It's human nature, this, isn't it? It's not specific to viruses or anything. It's psychological. Kate's in Enfield. Kate, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, Kate.
Picking up on what you just said, I think a lot of the people who are younger who perhaps have a kind of aversion to masks, a bit like what you just said, it's almost like a rebellion.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it's just a reason to protest against something. It's a reason to sort of
Is that line is there a line in Rebel Without a Cause? They say, what are you angry about? And he goes, what have you got?
Yeah. It's sort of like you turn up to any protest just for the chance to sort of scream and shout and wave a banner about. But there's also like a lot of I'm talking about people that would always be more on the left of politics,
yes.
Who are sort of like really against the masks. Some of the older people that I've spoken to who are against it tend to kind of be talking about it's against my freedom, my freedoms. It's a violation to sort of force me to cover up my face and to.
But why?
Put something over my
why
mouth.
do they want you to cover up your face?
Well, do you mean like as in throwing that question back to them?
Well, what would they say? Yeah, I mean, what?
Well, see, the problem with these sorts of people is once you begin the argument, it doesn't go anywhere, right? Because there comes a point where they can't respond anymore, and it becomes just sort of anger, and you kind of because it's like, well,
but before they get angry, I'll do it in a really cheeky, chappy way. I'll say, why do they want us all to cover our faces? Why do they want us to cover our faces?
And then it's because they're trying to control us, or because they're listening to America, or because they're being.
But none of this makes sense, Kate. None of this makes sense. Paid by someone. I suppose that's got a logic to it. Completely unprovable, but...
No, it's unprovable, but the thing is that there's evidence that people use to sort of say that there's conspiracy or that the masks are not of any use. And the problem is there is some...
there's usually a nugget somewhere, isn't there, that can be manipulated.
There's an expert for everything,
science
right?
Changes. Well, there is these days, yeah.
Yeah, there's a doctor for everything, as in not a doctor, but as in someone's got a PhD in pretty much anything. And the way that science works is there's always someone trying to disprove what someone else has proven. So you're always going to get mixed data to some extent. But you don't base your entire public policy for health based on one person's statistics that say, actually, you might catch more colds if you wear a mask, and you might not actually.
But the why of it, is it naive of us then? Because I sense you're similar to me. Is it naive to think that these people should be asking why more? So they think they've got all the answers. That's the weirdest thing about this. It's always the case with conspiracy theorists, isn't it? That they think they've asked all the questions, but they haven't actually asked any.
No, because it's like a cult, right? So if you talk to someone about a cult, then the instant thing is defence, right? Because they feel vulnerable, perhaps because deep down they know that what they're saying might not have enough evidence. But
then what's the appeal of being in the cult then? Because
to be a rebel. It's to just be anti-status quo, right? It's to be on the other side of the majority. It's to be
But Jacob Rees-Mogg is anti-mask. That's not. How can it be? How can it be rebellious to be in the same bed as?
I think he is slightly rebellious. He's rebellious in the opposite sense. He's rebellious by being such a traditionalist that he stands out like a sore thumb, right?
Yeah, you're very good. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that. Contrarian, then. A contrarian would be the word.
And people love to be a contrarian. Like some people will just go into any conversation and deliberately take, the opposite side and play devil's advocate.
Occasionally be guilty of that myself, but these are important matters. And why does
it's part of your job, probably.
The why never comes into it. The why of it. Why are they trying to do this? So you give me the examples of what they're trying to do. They want you to cover your face. They want to control you. How are they going to control? Why? How does this lead?
Why? The good point is the why. And the thing is that a lot of people live their lives and they don't ask why about many things, right?
It's very true.
Yeah. And that's why society functions in the way it does.
And so then final question, because you're on fire today. Frankly, you should be presenting the programme today, okay? I should be ringing in. How come they can wave through assaults upon the Human Rights Act, barefaced lies from the most senior levels of government, green-lighting bullying? How come they can wave through all the things that constitute genuine evidence?
It doesn't personally affect them. It doesn't personally require them to put a piece of fabric over their mouth when they stand on the tube. And
that is what it was. How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah, so how dare you tell me what to do? Yeah. I'm not going to put that over my face.
So we're just back to children. We're back to children who've never learned how to play nicely.
Because lots of adults haven't ever addressed their sort of inner child and probably still struggling with many things.
And that could be
it's a small outlet.
School uniforms. Where would this resentment begin? I want to have Angel Delight for dinner every day and I'm not allowed to, and there's some festering resentment about they made me wear a uniform at school and I'm still cross about it despite being 50. I just find it fascinating, absolutely fascinating, dispiriting, but again, what if we're wrong? What if there is a secret plan? What if people have proper answers to the question of why is this government portraying itself as an enemy of restrictions, accused frequently of not going far enough, fast enough, while secretly being embarked upon a course designed to seize control of the population through the medium of face masks. The more you talk about it, the more bonkers it becomes. Could we finally have stumbled across what law would you like to lose? The successor to which law? Which was a regular punctuation mark during my Brexity conversations over the last few years. People adamant that they had to leave the European Union in order to take control of our laws, but could never give you a single example of a law that they currently resented having to follow. Never mind the profound ignorance of how the European Union operates, demonstrated by that mindset, just the absolute absence of evidence. And of course, what we discovered over the years was that you didn't need any evidence for a belief. In fact, the less evidence you've got, the more powerful the lure of believing became, something that Theresa May understood, I think, possibly implicitly, when she started talking about believing, but you've got to believe more. Imagine other areas of life where you were told that something that was evidentially unlikely would become more likely if you just believed more. Every football fan in the country, well done, of course, Harriers on Saturday at Hereford, winning. First time we've won on penalties in 30 years, and now roll on the FA Cup match next Sunday. But if I go to the game next Sunday, if I go to the Halifax game, and I mean, I know we all sit there thinking that our belief will make a difference, but if it did, every team would win. No team would ever lose. Or the team that believe more. So maybe we found the new one, because my question for you today is, with this caveat, I don't know that we'll go nuts about this for the rest of the week, because I don't know how many people really do fall into these categories. I sense there's a bit more lethargy around than gets reported properly. People are just, flipping mask, I forgot. So then the more people that wear it, the more people are prompted to remember to wear it by the fact that everybody in front of them is wearing it. But the people who genuinely believe there's something going on, there's something going on, James. There's some sort of sinister master plan. Then I think it is reasonable to ask them what the plan is. And if you have succeeded in getting an answer to that question from one of these people who is adamant that our liberties are being attacked deliberately by one of the most right-wing governments we've ever seen, what is the plan? And what should we be looking out for? What are they going to come for next? 03456060973, giving us all these medicines, giving us all this free medicine, all these free vaccines. It's outrageous. What's the next big milestone on the road towards totalitarianism? What will that be? Free food? I mean, what will it be? What will it be? What will be the big alarm bell that allows you to go, ha-ha, I told you that they were coming for you, and you didn't pay any attention at all because you're such a smug, anti-patriotic muppet. So what is it? What's the next big alarm bell going to be? Rodri's in Brixton. Rodri, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How you doing?
Very well, Rod. I'm a bit confused, but in a kind of amused way now rather than in a befuddled way. What have you got for me?
So funny enough, I actually asked the exact question that you were asking. I asked the gentleman on the train this weekend.
Really?
But yeah, basically me and myself and two female friends were on the train wearing masks, like just an overground train in London. And this guy comes on and sees that we're wearing masks, and we're basically the only people in the carriage. There's about 20 or 30 people in there. We're pretty much the only people wearing them.
Yeah.
And we noticed that he's sort of giving the side eye over in his seat, and then he just starts sort of muttering under his breath, and that sort of leads him into just a tirade on brainwashing and conspiracy and that kind of thing. And it got to the point, we tried to ignore him for a little bit, but it got to the point where I just sort of said to him, I was like, okay, so what exactly do you believe is going on, kind of thing you do every morning?
Well, yes. Try not to make it sound so easy, all right?
And, I mean, the problem is that he had nothing and just kept coming.
Well, he had his anger. He had his anger and he had his disapproval of you. He had his freedom to abuse you or to deride you, or even if he'd kept quiet, just to look down on you. He was given some sort of, and that is a bit Brexit, isn't it? A false sense of superiority or some sort of, because he must have had something, even though he didn't have a clue. He had something, didn't he? It was something precious to him was going on there.
Yeah, but what was actually really funny was that when he got off the train a couple of stops later, is obviously, I'm with two girls and they were a bit shaken up by it.
Of course.
And there were other people on the train coming up and, you know, saying, oh, you know, it's all right, that guy, you know, he's an idiot, that kind of thing. But they weren't wearing masks.
No.
And I was like, the funny part about that was that, you know, there was a cognitive dissonance behind, you know, they were admonishing him for the abuse about the thing that they were doing as well.
Well, they're the most
different reasons.
Well, exactly that, because that's the most interesting constituency, and that's the one I think that the new regulations, the new restrictions are directed at. It's the people. Well, I'm not wearing a mask, but I'm not nuts. So if everyone's wearing one, I'll probably start wearing one again. I think we're all guilty of that. Actually, you were you know, obviously doing the right thing yesterday, but I think you noticed yourself. My mate Wayne's just tweeted me. We were out on Saturday night, and he went back to Essex, and he said on the tube around mine, getting from West London heading east, around mine, everyone was wearing a mask, so he had his mask on. Then he gets on the overland train, and no one's wearing a mask, so he takes his mask off. I think that behaviourally, we're all a bit susceptible to that kind of following examples.
Yeah, 100%.
But no, why?
100%. And you know, there's definitely been times where I haven't.
Yeah, same.
I'm not saying I'm above that at all, but I'm trying to sort of get back into the groove of doing it now.
Yeah, well, so am I. I mean, I'm probably more so. I always try to go a little bit further than you have to, but nobody could ever go, as far as is humanly possible. Well, maybe you could, but I can't. I'm human, you know. Also, I really crave company. It's the weirdest thing that's happened to me since the lockdown is I have become so sociable, having been quite antisocial for much of my life. 27 minutes after 11 is the time. William is in Brighton. William, what can you tell us?
Hello, James. How are you?
Very well, William. What's on your mind?
Well, I can hopefully give you an answer straight from the horse's mouth.
Yes. Are you the horse?
No, thanks to you.
Well, it's not straight from the horse's. God, I'm such a pedant. I'll shut up and let you speak. Sorry.
So, very good friend of mine.
Yeah.
Very lovely guy.
Yeah.
Love him to bits, but has definitely gone down this rabbit hole. He's been sending us group chat, various texts and stuff. So he says it's not about COVID at all. It's about controlling us and our movements through vaccination and digital and biometric passes.
Right. How does a biometric pass control our movement?
Well, he travels to Spain quite a lot, and now he's being stopped because he hasn't got a vaccine, and he won't do tests, and he doesn't do the mask.
Yeah.
So whilst it calmed down for a little bit, now it's all kicking off a bit with these sort of long ranting texts.
But that means he's choosing to let them control his movement.
Yes.
Whereas if he got vaccinated, he'd have free movement.
Exactly.
Well, free-ish, post-Brexit free movement.
Yeah, of course.
Well, we can't laugh yet, because why doesn't he realise that?
I can't laugh because 32 years of friendship nearly came to an end last year, you know.
I'm sure.
Thankfully,
you just agree not to talk about it, I imagine, do you, much of the time? But then it all starts bubbling back up again.
Yeah, he absolutely, via a very long phone call, said that our friendship was over, and I was.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry.
That was that.
No, that's no fun for anybody. But the biometric pass would be linked to a vaccine passport, would it?
It would be, and now he's questioning how they're doing the tests. But you know, it's all about coercing everyone on the planet.
And what's the end game? Why do they want to coerce everybody on the planet?
He just is convinced that there's all these nefarious deeds and actions that are being committed around the world by government and global institutions.
Right.
That it's some sort of medical apartheid.
But what will success look once they've got us all under control? What are they going to do with us? What happens after that?
That's a very, very good question.
Yeah. But, if only the horse was here. I'm touched by your call as well. There's a poignancy in your voice as you talk about your love for this friend of yours, and I think that's important to remember. Actually, an awful lot of people listening to this programme with quite a bittersweet sense, like Williams, of they haven't got a clue. It's a global conspiracy to take. I mean, I got stopped in the street by a bloke who honestly was telling me about a satanic paedophile cult that this is all designed to protect. And you see sitting there on the mat on Whitehall, standing on Whitehall with his camera in my face, and I'm thinking, I said to him, listen, I'm quite self-important, as you know, because you clearly listen to my radio show, otherwise you wouldn't have recognised me. I'm quite self-important, but I'm not as important as you think I am. Shouldn't you be out chasing down the satanic paedophile rather than some gob on a stick on the radio who doesn't believe they exist? It's just strange, but bittersweet, because, that's someone's son, that's someone's brother, someone's colleague, and they're watching it like William has watched it, just all fray at the edges and that doubling down. I told you a while ago I had a friend who flirted quite seriously, actually. Our relationship was almost consummated with the EDL, and we came very close to falling out in the same way that William has just described, and he came back to us. But it was heartbreaking when it was going on. And it was based upon beliefs that had no evidential support and a desire to feel, I don't know. That's the bit that's missing. So John in Fife says, if you go to a strict public school, then any show of defiance is a win. And mate, that's my life you're describing. I got slung out of a strict public school. I don't see that when I look at Jacob Rees-Mogg. I don't see a rebel. I don't know. Anyway, how good are you at recognising faces and and names? There is a theory that if you're quite bad, if you've got a poor visual memory, you struggle to remember faces and objects, it might be because you've got a massive ego. Did you know this? Have you seen this? I quite like this story, not for the reason you're thinking. I'm actually quite good at remembering faces and objects. In fact, I go out of my way sometimes I've got little rhymes in my head to remember the names of people that work in places that I go to as a sort of aide memoir. But I'll explain to you why, if you've got a massive ego, that could be why you struggle to remember faces and objects. I'll explain to you before home time today. Of course, if I remember, I may not. Do you see what I did there? Yeah? And I don't know, the next hour, there's quite a nice little story about so-called trigger warnings being put on some outwardly fairly innocuous classics at a Scottish university. I like those sort of stories because I think that they're usually all smoke and no fire, but we may have a look at that. I can't personally see any problem with this, but the phrase trigger warning is another one of those phrases that seems to have been unduly woke. No one really seems to know what they mean by it, but they're absolutely adamant that it's a very bad thing. So we may have a look at that a little later, or we may carry on with this. I certainly want to move on to the question of a sort of broader question, how we feel about the restrictions announced yesterday that will be introduced tomorrow. Or was it on Saturday they were announced? They were announced on Saturday and they'll be introduced tomorrow. Because, and if you've been kind enough to listen to this programme at all during the pandemic, you'll know that this is not something that I say often, but I think and I've made some terrible mistakes, chiefly in feeling quite warm towards Matt Hancock. You can tell by my tone of my voice, I still can't quite believe that. I'll tell you what it is. It's the curse of being a liberal. This is the thing. If you're not binary and tribal, if you haven't got your football scarf tied so tightly around your neck that you have cut off the supply of blood to your head, then you kind of want to see the good in everyone, even if there's only just small glimpses of good. And then if you extrapolate from wanting to see the good in everyone to political parties, so even the political parties that you are opposed to, either morally or ideologically or politically, you want to believe that there are some good in them. And I think that is why I strained too hard to feel warmly towards Matt Hancock, because he just seemed to mean it when he was talking about protecting people. He seemed to mean it, and none of the other ones did. But anyway, that ship has sailed. I'm almost reluctant to tell you who I'm quite impressed by in the cabinet these days, because it's almost like a kiss of death. If I tell you who I quite like the cut of his jib, or her jib, then a fortnight from now they'll be caught up in some massive scandal, some massive career-ending scandal, and it'll be all my fault for publicly suggesting that they seem to be all right. So I'll hold off, although there is one in particular. Can you guess who it is? Text me who you think it is, and I'll just say whether or not a majority have guessed the right person. There's one member of the cabinet at the moment who I think seems all right. What's the text number? I haven't said the text number in about 5 years. It's 84850 for the texts. And then back to this question, which I find enduringly fascinating. What's the plan? Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the breakthrough that we have made in trying to understand people who honestly believe. I don't mean people trying to sort of have a career resurrection, or people just desperate for some sort of validation, or people who need a new niche, need a new drum to beat. I mean, people like your friends or your family who genuinely believe that the face mask mandate is evidence of the government accruing dictatorial powers. And then you throw in the phrase biometric pass or vaccine, whatever you do. Don't tell them about an Oyster card. An Oyster card records where you go. People still use Oyster cards. Your bank card will be recording where you go all the time. Don't tell them about that. They'll never leave the house again. CCTV. So the genuine belief, not the attention-seeking whining, the genuine belief that's probably been put there by attention-seeking whiners, but your friend, your family member, a genuine belief that there is a plan afoot, either globally or nationally, to control us or to control you. What does that plan look like? 0345 6060 973. And what will the next bits of that? Well, how does the face mask mandate tie into that plan when, off the top of my head, a desire to abolish the Human Rights Act doesn't? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Harry is in Chelsea. Harry, what do you reckon?
Hi, good morning, James. How are you?
Very well,
I'm
Harry.
Calling because I did some research a couple of months ago looking at individualism and collectivism in countries, the difference between the cultures. And something I found really interesting was that there's a very strong trend between countries which are known to be individualistic and a lack of compliance with mask wearing.
What is a mark of an individualistic country then?
Yeah, so for example, an individualistic country can be one that the people in the country consider themselves to be strong or self-reliant or even, things like assertive or independent.
Okay.
But they're good enough on their own. They're good enough to do it by themselves, which, by the way, I'm sure you're aware, these are traits of Brexit, right?
Yes, but that's half the country, but it is also the blood in the veins of the current government, isn't it? So it's doubly relevant.
And they're also, I think this also links back to Trump, to one of the reasons why Trump was elected, that make America great again, strongest country in the world. We can do this on our own. And if you look at the Hofstede score of these two countries for individualism, they're both ranked really high. The US at 91, the UK at 89.
I didn't know.
Comparing them to collectivist countries in Europe, you've got Spain at 51.
Is that right? 70. What's it called, the scale that you referred to?
So the actual research is by a guy called Geert Hofstede. And it's the cultural dimensions theory.
How interesting. And what would the Catholic countries be more collectivist, or Spain, Italy?
I guess that's something you could draw, but I don't think so, because if you look at something like South Korea, they are potentially...
No, I'm just talking in Europe, that was all. But South Korea is very... So this idea that society is bigger than the individual.
Yeah, precisely. So,
Got it.
That's the main thing. If you look at something like collectivist countries, I called a couple of weeks ago from Barcelona about the refereeing.
Yeah.
And this was something which I thought was crazy looking at, and just knowing that in Barcelona everyone's going to wear a mask. In France, everyone's going to wear a mask, and there's no questions asked. No one's even talking about it. They aren't, no one's talking on national radio about whether we should wear a mask or not. You wear a mask because it's something which is going to help not yourself, but it's going to help the elderly lady down the road.
And that's just not even something that... there are protests in the countries you refer to. There are anti-vaccine protests, and I presume that goes hand in hand with some sort of anti-mask rhetoric. But you're talking about the scale of the issue and the amount of attention that it is given.
People just do it, James. People just do it. It's, for me, wearing a mask for 20 minutes on the tube, what's it going to do to me?
I don't know. This is the bit that was the other bit we forgot to ask.
You might have a little spot on your lip the day after, but I doubt the middle-aged men, sorry to categorise and stereotype, who are not going to wear a mask care about a little spot on their lip. I'm sure they're doing it for a reason.
And if 10 years from now or 10 months from now, it turns out, which it's not going to do, we know now, but if it did turn out, theoretically, a fantasy scenario, that we didn't need to wear masks at all and they didn't make the blindest bit of difference, what am I going to feel cross about when I look back and remember wearing a mask? That's another bit I don't get, Harry.
Exactly the same as why people vote at Brexit, as to why you want to have the 8% of the laws which are created in Brussels, why you want to get rid of those and to stop, take away the law which allows curtains not to flame up in your house. Why that's important in 10 years' time? It's not important in 10 years' time. It's self-important,
really
right?
important now, and it's linked to my identity. It's who I am. It's
exactly, and
it's what makes me a tough guy.
Doing it by yourself. and being able to do it by yourself, which goes against the globalized world we're meant to be living in, which is why it really worries me that the difference between London and Barcelona, or even Madrid, or even Paris, is so stark with just wearing a mask. Such a small thing.
And I wonder if 10 years ago the difference would have been as stark, or 20 years ago when the political landscape in this country felt a little different. Do you have an answer to the other question? Because you've got a very good answer to that question, the one about the plan. What is the plan that these people think is being secretly unfolded beneath our noses?
I don't believe there is a secret plan.
No, I know you don't, but what do you think they think the plan is?
They have no idea.
No, that's a slight...
They think that the plan
now we're back to Brexit, because now you're being condescending and sneering and you're looking down your nose at people who are less educated than you are.
It's understandable.
Yeah.
I understand that. But when there's a thing like coronavirus, when none of us really know how it started, none of us really know how it's going to end,
yes,
there's this uncertainty. And with uncertainty, people are going to be skeptical. It's normal. It happens in every walk of life, and I think it's completely understandable they don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening.
I don't know.
I'm going to trust the scientists.
Sure.
Because that's what I believe. But, of course, they don't have to believe that.
And the more you commoditise scepticism, or the more you promote scepticism as a well, in the media, it's a commodity now, isn't it? Then the more problems you create, probably, and the more people think, well, hang on a minute, I heard it I saw it on the telly, I heard it on the radio. It can't be complete hogwash.
I think what's really worrying now is Nicola Sturgeon, with what's happening in Scotland this morning, saying that they want to do the 8-day quarantine for all international arrivals. To me, that just says the same thing, that, she doesn't want to ruin Christmas. She said that she wants Christmas to be a good year. But let's face it, we are a country that my family live in the US, for example. Yeah. So all my family, they're going to come to the US for Christmas. Well, hang on, if there's a 10-day quarantine, they're not coming for Christmas.
No, absolutely not.
So let's think of the greater picture. Let's think of we are just a little grain of sand, part of a greater...
Well, that's why I mentioned religion, actually, and I think it was actually pertinent now. I don't know why it popped out like that, but of course, religion teaches you to be more conscious of others than perhaps the individualism of the society we're currently inhabiting does. Harry, thank you, mate. I always like talking to you. That was a really helpful contribution. Hofstede. We shall look into that after the show, Keith. Quite close. I would say a majority, apart from everyone making a joke about one current member of the cabinet who quite obviously isn't the one that I am feeling quite mildly admiring of. I'd say about 3 or 4 contenders, so 40% going to one of them is. But I'm not going to say who it is out loud, because he'll probably announce that he's invading France or something by tea time today, and just as a direct proof of the rule that whenever I say something nice about a member of this government, the kiss of death is administered. 11:51 is the time. I am going to take a moment. I'll be with Daniel Imbo very shortly, just to describe something that you may or may not have seen this morning. And this is actually part of the reason why at the beginning of the programme I did wonder out loud whether social media skews our perception of how many people out there really are persuaded or more threatened by the notion of a mask mandate or a mask than they are by the actual virus. And I don't know that is true anymore. I think speaking to you today it's obviously out there, and possibly listening to Harry in Chelsea a moment ago, it could be linked to our almost our political and cultural identity as an individualistic society. But I don't know if you've seen the footage of Piers Corbyn on the tube. These are the moments that very naively I think these moments will be game changers. So Piers Corbyn and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 collaborators have filmed themselves on a London Underground train singing a song. I'll say the words once. It contains a mildly fruity word, so if the kids are in the car they might giggle. It's not a rude word, Keith. Relax, it's all right. And I played it out this morning. I'm not going to play it out on the radio, because kind of you need to see it as well. But the song is called, if that's the right word, I don't know. Wearing a mask is like trying to keep a fart in your trousers. And these are adults. These are grown men and women singing it with some gusto, unmasked on a London Underground train, and tearing down the stickers telling people to wear masks. Now, I would have thought, even if you were worried about the New World Order, or whatever it is being called today, I would have thought this was one of those to borrow from another political dynasty, this is one of those George Bush moments, isn't it? This is when you're either with us or against us. So you're either with the wearing a mask is like trying to keep a fart in your trousers troop, or you're against them. But I don't know. Apparently it doesn't work like that. It all goes a bit People's Front of Judea. So I'm anti-mask, but I'm not like, I mean, they're the mad ones over there. They're the mad ones. I believe in the satanic paedophile cults. I wouldn't sing songs about flatulence. That'd be ridiculous. Oh, you don't want to listen to the satanic paedophile cult lot. They don't know what they're talking about. It's all about biometric passports. It's the biometric passports you got. We've already got biometric passports. Yeah, but not the really biometric ones. They're coming in next. If you let them get the masks, today it's masks, tomorrow it's biometric passport, eyeball scanning technology. They've already got that as well. Yeah, but not the really bad stuff. So do they all argue with each other? If you ever go on one of these protests, do they all argue with each other? Have you got the satanic paedophile lot like lobbing verbal abuse at the Piers Corbyn lot, and then the Piers Corbyn lot lobbing verbal abuse at the biometric part? I don't know. And part of me doesn't care. And part of me kind of despairs. 11:55 is the time. Daniel's in Bow. Sorry to keep you, Daniel. What would you like to say?
That's okay. I might be a little bit nervous, to be honest with you.
Oh, don't worry. It's only me.
Well, I want to open with I used to be a conspiracy theorist quite a while ago.
Okay. Which one, briefly, if you don't mind, or which ones?
Well, it was kind of anything, really, that would rile people up. Anything. This is where I'll start tripping up over myself.
Don't worry. I mean, if you're recovered, then I'm not here to examine what you used to believe. I'm just interested in knowing what it was. So moon landings.
Like 9/11 used to be.
Okay.
It wasn't real. It was just.
Okay, that's a biggie.
Yeah, I know. But then I kind of dragged my brother into these conspiracies.
Okay.
So that's why I feel very responsible for his current position.
On masks and vaccines?
On masks and vaccines.
Which you don't share? You don't share?
I don't. I've fully pulled away. And
right.
I never truly believed in any of these conspiracy theories. No. I've done it just to wind people up.
Okay, it's very honest.
But then I pulled my brother into it.
Yeah.
And he went much further than me, and he still currently to this day resides down that rabbit hole.
Gosh.
So he's now a London bus driver.
Yeah.
But he's public with his public Facebook posts and so on. He thinks that masks are dehumanising.
Right.
And that's the goal for trying to press people to wear these masks. So that's why I asked it. Questions that you ask as well.
Yeah.
Why Boris Johnson would be celebrating the removal of such restrictions.
Yes.
And his argument is that because because Boris Johnson wants the population to call for these restrictions, so they're not imposed.
Oh, it's clever.
And then it moves on to.
So he wants to reluctantly. He desperately wants to bring in the restrictions.
Yeah.
But despite having an 80-seat majority and a more or less carte blanche to do whatever he wants, he actually wants it to look like he doesn't want to bring them in, and he's only doing so reluctantly.
Yeah, because we all know that Boris Johnson doesn't like upsetting people.
Yeah, and he's always, consistent and clear and has got stuff worked out months in advance.
So,
oh, bless him.
And then he moves on to vaccines as well.
Right.
This vaccine right now, it's just a placebo because the virus doesn't exist.
And why are they lying about that?
Yeah, this is where it gets even crazier.
Go on.
It's because when this vaccine gets rolled out, it becomes people accept top-ups.
Yeah.
When a little bit further down the line, they'll start introducing vaccines which harm people's fertility, may even cause deaths for population control. You know, that really far-reaching
population control. So they want to reduce the number of people in a society.
Yeah, and the common thought is they want to do societies down to 500 million globally. You know,
and why is that? So the vaccine, they tell us it's going to save us, but it's actually going to kill us.
Yeah, that's what his general thinking is.
Okay, well, at least he's got a rationale, for want of a better word. At least he's got an answer to these questions. I can understand now why you sounded so despairing at the top of the call.
What makes it worse is I've pointed out the evidence why masks work, how the virus is real, how the vaccines work. but then he just removes my posts, stops talking to me. He's blocked me completely. But then now when I still confront him with all of the evidence, he throws insults at me, makes up lies and so on, just so that he can carry on with his narrative. But to be honest with you, I think he knows what he's talking is rubbish. This is more of an ego thing for him.
Right. And and this is why you feel the guilt, because you recognise in him what you used to...
Yeah, that's right.
Gosh.
So I've been trying for quite some time to actually pull him away from it.
You've got to carry on, Dan. You know you've got to carry on, and you've got to be there for him when he falls, haven't you?
And put up with the insults in between, yeah.
And put up with the insults in between. Well, that is it. That is the cross that you bear. But he's your brother, so you have to. You know, but so and if I said to him finally, because I don't want to be too late than you, if we said to him, why do they want to reduce the population to that figure? Is there an answer to that question?
Just control. Just so they can. What could they control? They can't lose power of, and it keeps their position at the top of the pyramid.
And you point out that Boris Johnson's record of adding to the population is fairly...
Well, no, don't be silly. Why would I do something like that?
He's a very odd poster boy for population control, isn't he?
Oh, definitely. But then Boris Johnson is entitled, isn't he?
I guess so. Well, he's lucky to have you in his life, because you clearly still love him, and there is clearly that sense of responsibility that you have for him, albeit that you also feel the responsibility for where he's gone. I'm sure he would have found his own way down those rabbit holes, Daniel, in the way that many people have done. But thank you. That's the perfect answer. That's the perfect answer to the question, in a way, of what these people actually believe.